The Giants officially interview Nick Hundley. Buster Posey continues to stretch the importance of pitching, and some rumors around the league. That's all coming up on Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. My name is Alan Stiles. On the show, we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that combines passion, analytics, and the eye test with a little bit of fun. I'm from the Bay Area, but I live in Sacramento now, and I host a show at Sacktown Sports 1140, the Alan Stiles Show, 10 a.m., 2 p.m. Be sure to check that out as well. And I MC Sacramento Rivercats games. All in all, I'm lucky enough to cover a team I've been a fan of all my life. Today, we are talking about Nick Hundley and how he officially interviewed Buster Posey, breaking down the pitching needs and other openings and rumors, everything that's going on throughout the league. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, according to Susan Slusser of the SF Chronicle, Nick Hundley has officially interviewed for the Giants manager job. And not only that, he is kind of the favorite to land it. And we talked about this yesterday and going back into last week, his name even being brought up. Clearly, this guy is somebody that Buster Posey is really interested in, and there are a couple reasons why, from his philosophy to his age, a lot of different reasons Buster Posey feels like this is somebody he can mold to be the manager, not just now, but of the future. When you take a step back, it's not hard to see why Buster is so interested in Nick Hundley. He checks just about every box this front office seems to value. First things first, let's start with the obvious. He's a former catcher, and we've seen time and time again how catchers do make great managers. And I saw a comment saying, Alan, why do you think that it has to be a catcher, and naming off a couple of managers, or there are a lot of managers out there that weren't catchers. And I don't think it's a thing that is something that's happening around the league. I think catchers are always going to get the nod just because of the position and what that position means. But for the Giants specifically, I said this before and I'll say it again, I don't mind Buster Posey saying he has a type, right? I don't mind Buster Posey saying this is what I want within the organization, because I think too many times in the past, they haven't known what they wanted. When they moved off of Gabe Kapler, I think the only thing they did know is that they wanted somebody that was more old school. So they just went and found Bob Melvin, who, again, the Padres were willing to part from within the division. So that tells you something right there. And that's not a slight at Bob Melvin. It just felt like the only thing they knew moving on from Gabe Kapler is they wanted something that was very, very traditional. And that's what they got in Bob Melvin. This time around, Buster Posey can be a little bit picky. And later in the show, I'll discuss the other openings and why Buster Posey can be a little bit picky. So this is how he's going about it. So it's not necessarily that they have to do this or they have to do that. Buster Posey, a former catcher, is in charge. So that's why he wants to move in this situation. And again, there are a lot of examples of catchers making great managers, and there are a lot of examples of catchers not working out either. They're used to handling pitching staffs. They're used to managing different personalities. And for Nick Hundley specifically, balancing analytics with instinct. Second, he's got history with the Giants organization, spent 2 seasons with the Giants, knows the organization, and more importantly, got a strong relationship with Buster Posey. That trust matters. Posey has a huge voice in this process. He is the voice in this process, along with Zach Manassian, and Hundley's presence brings a sense of continuity to the clubhouse that it's been missing. On top of that, since retiring, Hundley's been working in the league office. So he's got that front office perspective that fits the Giants' modern approach. He understands both sides, the data-driven approach of today's game and the human side that connects with players. I think that is number one on this list. There has to be a balance. You can't be stuck in the mud, stuck in your old ways. And hey, well, this is how we did it back in my day. By the way, I don't know how many people saw that bunt from the Phillies. All I needed the Phillies to do is beat the Smurfs, and they can't do it. They're about to get swept. It's embarrassing. And I was really torn on that bunt play because that was just outstanding. I hate to give any kudos to the Dodgers, but Max Muncy, that was a ridiculous play. Max Muncy, Mookie Betts looks like he's been playing shortstop his whole life. That was more of, look, the bunt was a little hard, but there were comments, well, you don't bunt to the third baseman on a sacrifice if you're trying to get the runner to third. From what I recall, you are supposed to bunt to the third baseman because it's tougher for him to basically get the ball, essentially do a 360 and throw to third. If you bunt to first base, he's crashing and he's got that momentum kind of moving towards first. That's how I was always taught. So I don't think the Phillies did anything wrong. There are a lot of people that don't like bunting, period. I don't think the Phillies did anything wrong. I think Nick Castellanos could have seen it maybe a little clearly or more clearly and ran back to second, but I know it was a bang situation and just embarrassing stuff for the Phillies to get swept. They've already gotten swept in their 2 home games, so we'll see what happens in LA, but that one's probably over. But situations like that where Buster Posey and Nick Hundley are on the same page, whether or not they would want to bunt there, I don't know I honestly don't know if Buster would or wouldn't, but that is a conversation that they would have and probably have had or did have in that interview yesterday to figure out, hey, where are you at in situations like this? Do we have the same philosophy? And my assumption is they've already had certain conversations like this because of their time together. So while on paper, this might seem like a quote unquote safe move, it actually makes a lot of strategic sense. Hundley bridges the gap between the old school guy and the new school thinker, and the Giants literally want something just like that. At 42 years old, also, he'd be the 5th youngest manager in Major League, or tied for 5th youngest manager in Major League Baseball right now. He actually just turned 42, I believe, in September. So that is something where you can connect. I got a nephew who is in his early 20s, right? And I'm 35. So if you add another decade on to that, I still think I'd be able to understand some of the things, maybe not all the things he's saying, and some of the nuances of being a young man or a young player in the league. But 42 is a lot different, and I'm going to say it, and it's not to be a slight at all, but 42 is different than being 63, which was how old Bob Melvin is. So the only reason I bring that up is because of the farm system, and everybody keeps asking me about the farm system. Alan, what are they going to do about the farm system? Well, the farm system has already jumped up 10 spots in Buster Posey being here for about a year, right? They went from 28 to 18. So they're already moving in the right direction. And because of that, the Giants want a manager that they feel can be able to at least talk to in some capacity to these young players coming up. Obviously, 40 whatever to 18, 19, or by the time they get to the big leagues, 22 is still a large gap. But 63 is an even larger gap, and we've seen this with managers of other teams where there's just a little bit of disconnect. So that is the kind of breakdown on Nick Hundley, and a different version of it simply because Nick Hundley has officially interviewed. They're literally saying that he is the front runner. We're not hearing anything about Kurt Suzuki. And from what I heard and read yesterday, feels like the Kurt Suzuki thing was more of a courtesy interview. That's not for sure. That's not for certain, but that's what I'm gathering based on who I've talked to and just what we're hearing throughout the different articles being written. On the other side, Buster continues to talk about pitching and the importance of pitching heading into the offseason. There are some big names available. Does that mean Justin Verlander shouldn't be at the top of the list? Should he be on the list at all? Don't move. More Locked On Giants coming up. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You can identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Maximizing investments, increasing your savings rate, easily reviewing finances with your partner and or financial advisor, keeping a clear view of your financial health week to week and long term. That's how I'm using Monarch Money. Don't let financial potential opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. So when it comes to offseason priorities, Buster Posey continues to tell us exactly what it is. He isn't hiding it from anyone. The offseason priorities, it comes down to pitching, the priority of pitching. And Buster Posey isn't hiding it. He is spelling it out. In his conversation with NBC Sports Bay Area, Posey said point blank, quote, "I think our focus is going to be on pitching to try to fortify our starting staff. The same goes with the bullpen. That's the clearest indication yet of where San Francisco's front office is headed this winter." And it's not hard to see why. The Giants' pitching depth got exposed down the stretch in 2025, a year when the team finished 500 and missed the playoffs. They cycled through young arms like Keaton Winn, Mason Black, Hayden Birdsong, but none provided the consistency of a true number two behind Logan Webb. Posey acknowledged that they're saying, or I should say even number three, because you got Robbie Ray, and I would say Landon Roop is in there as well. And Posey says, quote, "You're hoping that each year some of these young arms will take a step forward. That's something that needs to happen." And it's crazy how many different names they've tried. And I know McDonald, it went really well for him at the end of the season because off the top of my head, he showed the most swing through stuff out of all the names we've said outside of the Landon Roops of the world and guys like that. Posey's message wasn't just about hope, though. It was about reinforcing a philosophy, the one that he believes should define this franchise moving forward. Quote, "What we believe to be the recipe of success is pitching and defense. So we know we need to be better there. A lot of times it can eliminate some of those tough stretches." And again, some of this is from the NBC Sports Bay Area article. Some of this is from just things that Posey has said in the past within the last couple weeks. And while the Giants offense has holes, particularly in the outfield, Posey indicated they'll have resources to do more than just tinker. When asked if ownership is willing to expand the payroll, Posey said the group is committed to putting a winning group together and winning players on the field. That $178 payroll doesn't seem to be something to hold up the Giants' hopes and dreams of doing that. That gives the Giants room to add at least one impact starter and a high leverage arm, a bullpen arm, both of which are must-haves if this team is going to build around a run prevention identity. So the blueprint is clear. Double down on what works in Oracle Park, pitching and defense, and let the offense develop behind it. Posey, it's less about flashy rebuild and more about restoring what made the Giants great in the first place. Here are some of the exact quotes that I found to be pretty intriguing from his talk with Laura Britt. And he says, quote, "You always hear it. You can never have enough pitching. I feel like we came into the year thinking that we had a nice amount of depth, but then by the end, it didn't feel like we had a lot of depth. It was definitely a learning experience for me to learn that the old adage, you can never have enough pitching, is definitely true." That almost sounds like, and I don't want to read too much into it, it almost sounds like he thought that they could sell at the deadline and still have enough pitching to power through. And what's crazy is that the Giants, we're a couple of games out of missing the playoffs. And if Randy Rodriguez doesn't get injured, he might have been right, but that's his point. You can never have enough pitching. And Randy Rodriguez did get injured. So that did happen to kind of screw up the Giants' plans. And now you have to make guys starters that weren't starters and go from there, which was just rough. But they did have right there on the fringe enough to get by. And that's Posey's point. Even if you think you have enough, you don't have enough. It almost reminds me of what my mom says in a way, just always take more than you need. Or if you think it's going to be cold, but you don't know how cold, just over a layer, and you can always take off layers. The same thing if you're going somewhere, you're going to a wedding or something like that, and you're not sure if it's black tie or if it's just kind of business casual. It's always better to be a little bit overdressed than underdressed. And I think the same goes for pitching. It's always better to have too much pitching than not enough, because you never know what could happen, right? I've been to a wedding, you forget to wear, you don't wear a jacket. Everybody else got jackets on. Now you're thinking, man, I should have wore a jacket. That was the Giants basically at the end of the season. They thought they had enough. They thought they dressed well enough. And then it turned out that people were dressed up and had ties on and had jackets on and had dress shoes on, and they weren't prepared. And they looked a little bit out of place, and they missed the playoffs because of it. This was specifically about Justin Verlander. Quote, "He's been great. He was a great teammate," Posey said. "I personally feel like he pitched even when he was probably receiving a lot of criticism early in the year. I felt like he was still in a place that was putting us in a good spot that we could win games. He didn't get a ton of run support, and the bullpen gave it up for him a little bit in some of those stretches, but then he really turned it on towards the end of the season. It was pretty remarkable for a guy that turns 43 in the spring to be able to go out and compete against guys that some are half his age. It was pretty impressive. So if you put all this together and you read the tea leaves as to what the Giants are saying, it sounds like the approach is getting one of Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Zach Gallen for your big money guy. And then besides that, maybe you're finding a bullpen arm and you try to hang on to Verlander on a team-friendly deal, right? Not to say it's going to be an extremely cheap deal, but at least a team-friendly deal. That seems to be the play. Go get a big name. Go get a very solid bullpen name, which could be Tyler Rogers, right? So I guess a dream pitching lineup could be Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, one of those guys, right? You bring back Tyler Rogers, you go get Justin Verlander, and then you hope that the McDonald's of the world, the Blade Tidwells of the world, one of them is able to show up. I think that's probably the perfect / realistic situation where the Giants can be in a good spot heading into 2026 as far as the pitching is concerned. Because it's a crazy list. And the only other thing I would say is, yeah, if you really want to spend that cash, if you're the Giants, you could get more than one big name. I mean, it's their money. Right. There's obviously there's no hard salary cap, but there are different taxes that the Giants would have to pay. But clearly the Dodgers and teams like that, they do not care. So it's possible if you really want to get after it. I just don't know how realistic that is. I would say this, though, as the Giants are looking at being choosers versus beggars, contrary to hitters, where you do have to beg a little bit. If you're a pitcher, why wouldn't you want to go to Oracle Park? That's one of the best places to pitch in the league because it's so hard to hit there. So if I'm any of these pitchers looking to, obviously be successful and make sure my ERA is right, Oracle Park is at the top of the list. The same way it's probably at the bottom of the list for hitters, it's probably at the top of the list for pitchers. So you have to feel, if you're the Giants, that especially if you're willing to pay these guys, you're going to have a bit of your pick of the litter and be able to mold somebody and mold your rotation into what you want it to be. And it is crazy, though, looking at the different pitchers throughout the league that the Giants have had at times that are still currently pitching. Blake Snell went crazy for the Dodgers. What was that, yesterday? Other guys like that. The Blue Jays. It's pretty ridiculous how much pitching talent the Giants have had. But of course, with Kevin Gausman, right, in Toronto, but the Giants have had to make certain decisions that have been tough. And I think the way I want to use that example is that clearly it has not been hard to convince pitchers to come to San Francisco. Hitters is one thing, but the Giants need to just figure out who's the best pitcher they want, throw them the bag, as the kids say. And I think this is going to be pretty simple as far as getting that big arm that the Giants want. It's the other stuff. It's do you go get Justin Verlander? Do you believe that McDonald or one of these 18 young guys that you've tried out can take that next leap, and you ultimately go from there? Let's talk about rumors around the league, some of the other openings, and how the Giants stack up as far as brand is concerned and pulling in a big name manager and the pitchers, available pitchers and position players that are going to be out there this offseason. One more segment, Locked On Giants. You don't want to miss it. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. But actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. Fees are included. Know your total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. So let's get into these MLB rumors and some of the openings and the candidate landscape and where the hot stove is turning on right now. The recent moves and hiring announcements. The Rangers have already made their move. They hired Skip Schumaker as manager, and that was somebody that was at the top of my list. The Angels decided not to pick up Ron Washington's 2026 option and are parting ways with bench coach Ray Montgomery as well, opening a fresh managerial spot. Brian Snitker of the Braves announced he will not return as manager, stepping into an advisory role after a long and successful run. The Rockies, after his historically poor start and season, dismissed Bud Black. His interim, Warren Schaefer, took over for the remainder of the season. The Twins parted ways with Rocco Baldelli after a disappointing season, making that another open job. The Orioles moved on from Brandon Hyde, elevating Tony Mansolino as interim, but making it clear they will conduct a full search. I still don't know what happened with the Orioles, by the way. I know they had some injuries. Adley Rutschman has been super injured, but the Orioles were the talk of the town with 8,000 young prospects that were getting pulled up. So maybe that's part of the reason that Brandon Hyde lost his job. I do think there were some injuries as well, but I would keep an eye on the Orioles going into next season. I know they're American League, but they're also just a team that I find pretty interesting. I love their ballpark out there in Baltimore. If you haven't been, go check it out. The Nationals also made changes midseason, parting ways with Dave Martinez and GM Mike Rizzo. They have since hired Paul Taboni to manage their baseball operations, and selecting a new manager is among his priorities. So if you look at the vacancies, we have the Giants, the Angels, the Braves, the Rockies, the Twins, the Orioles, and the Nationals. Of course, the Rangers are no longer on that list. And as far as the brands are concerned, as I mentioned, the Giants, if they really want Nick Hundley, should go get Nick Hundley. That goes without being said. If the reports are that he is the main guy, he is the front runner, they just interviewed him, I do not have a problem with that at all. But if you look at some of these other names, as far as the teams looking for managers, the Angels, the Braves, the Rockies, the Twins, the Orioles, the Nationals, you kind of, again, I've said this term before in this show today, but you should have your pick of the litter. It should be anybody that you want if you are the Giants, as far as guys that are available and willing to make the next step. Now, that doesn't mean that they necessarily want to leave. There could be guys that would rather stay where they are at, but the Giants should be able to get whoever they want if that person is looking to make a name for themselves. Because even if somebody wants to argue the Braves as far as a brand is concerned, that's fine. That's just one other team. There's still a lot of candidates. So the Giants seem to really like Nick Hundley, and that's fine. Good for them. But this is a great opportunity to be looking for a manager, because the other names, I mean, the Rockies, that's a disaster. The Twins, you never know what's going to happen. They just sold off everyone. The Orioles, very confusing. The Nationals, complete disaster. There are also some trends, patterns, and kind of philosophical shifts that we're seeing throughout the league that I wanted to lay out for everyone. Many teams are hunting for a, quote, new voice or changing direction after plateaued performance, not just firing underperforming managers, but rethinking the leadership philosophy. MLB highlights how teams are focusing on candidates with versatility, communication skills, and developmental alignment with their front offices. Several rumored candidates across all franchises have catching backgrounds or strong pitcher relationships, signaling that more and more organizations are valuing those skill sets. I think a reason that this is being brought up a lot, not just the catcher thing, but also the new voice thing, is because ever since 2020, ever since COVID, at least this is how it feels to me, when they cut down all of those rounds for the draft, it feels like teams are less afraid to pull guys up quickly. We've joked about the A's out here in Sacramento. I actually had a coach's show with their third base coach, Eric Martins, and every week it felt like the A's were pulling somebody up. And they're pulling people up faster, and they're pulling people up in a hurry just throughout the league. And because of that, these guys, there are more guys coming into the league at 21, 22 years old versus 25, 26. Maybe not as a whole, but as far as the big name players, they are not wasting time getting these guys up here and getting them a cup of coffee. And I think that's important for the thought of the manager and how that manager can relate to those guys and those kids really that are being pulled up at that age. What does all this mean for the Giants? The Giants managerial opening sits amid a broader wave of change in baseball. While many teams are looking for continuity, some are going for radical resets. The San Francisco Giants choice will be not judged in isolation, but in comparison to how other franchises evolve going into 2026. The fact that several clubs are targeting managers with roster building or player development backgrounds just raises the bar. The Giants will need someone who can align with Buster Posey's vision, not just manage the games, but lead in harmony with the front office. Again, Nick Hundley with that connection to front offices and knowing how to connect with those in the front office, especially because he has a relationship with Buster Posey. He is not just a fringe rumor at this point, but he is a very, very serious candidate. As more teams rework their leadership and pool of candidates becomes more competitive, the Giants might find themselves bidding for a couple shared names, Albarnez, even Baldelli, who's available now, and competing with other teams for those resources. Again, I still think the Giants are in the best position to do that, and that's just based on history, that's based on brand, that's based on all of the above. So we will see how that turns out for the Giants, whatever their decision. Again, going back to you can't get this wrong. You're not battling with the Dodgers. You're not battling with the Yankees. You're not battling with the Mets. I don't think you're going to be battling with the Phillies, even though the Phillies are probably going to get swept. So some of these bigger names, they still had a great run. Some of these bigger names and bigger brands that you might have to battle with in other years, you don't have to battle with this year. So the Giants need to get this right for a couple different reasons, specifically Buster Posey. Thank you for listening to Locked On Giants. We will continue this conversation tomorrow as we do Monday through Friday. Be sure to follow me on social media at @_Styles Files, Styles with an I. Also follow Locked On Giants on X, on TikTok as well. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every single day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will talk to you tomorrow. Until then, peace.